people think that, oh, if I face challenges, it's somehow correlated with my spiritual depth, my spiritual path, my spiritual attainment. And all of us in our life, I think we've seen over the last year, perhaps in the last month or so, we've seen things happen to people we know, family members, distant people that have gone through very difficult times. We've seen tragedies happen. We've seen people die, friends die, devotees pass away. And sometimes there's this thought that passes through that difficult things happen. Why are they happening to us? Devotees, we should be protected from these sorts of things. We shouldn't be tested in this way. But that's not how this world is made. This world is made of tests and challenges, suffering, if you will. And the challenge for us is not that those come into our life. Our challenge is how are we going to respond to the difficult things that come to us sometimes in life. And that's really what the spiritual path, and that's what the life of a devotee is responding to those things. Now, I'd like to tell a story, a very ancient story. I think most of you have heard of this story. Some of you know the story. A few have probably read the story, and that's the story of Job. Now, before I tell the story, Job, you should realize, is out of the Old Testament, of course, and it's a fable. So take it as a fable. And what does a fable have? It has lessons, dramatized lessons, you might say. Now, Job, it's made clear right at the very beginning of this scripture, from this story. It's made clear that Job was a man who loved God. Job was a man who was righteous. He knew what to do that was right, and he acted rightly, and he loved God. So one day, God was speaking with Satan, and they were having a conversation. Remember, this is a fable, but God and Satan were having a conversation. And God brings up the name of Job as an example of a righteous man. And Satan says, he's righteous. He says he loves you, but that's because you give him so many blessings. You protect him. You look at how wealthy he is. He's got all these good things. And of course he's going to be righteous and do the right thing and express his love for you because you've given him so many blessings in life. God says, no. Job is a righteous, loving man. And Satan's not convinced. And Satan says to God, how about this? Allow me to test him. And God thinks about it, and he says, okay, I'll allow you to test him just to demonstrate. But on one condition, you cannot take his life. And so Satan says, okay. And he goes about his business, the satanic business that he's engaged in, and he tests him. He takes away all of his riches. One thing happens after another calamity. He loses his lands. He loses his houses. He loses his money. He loses everything of material value. Then, one by one, his 10 children die. Tragic circumstances, and they're gone. But yet, Job remains faithful. He does not understand why. He says, why, God? Why? I don't understand. But he still loves God. And he's righteous. And so God says to Satan, well, you see? And he says, well, let me test him a little bit more. And God reminds him, well, you can't kill him. And Satan says, okay. He goes, and now he takes away all of his good name, you might say. people begin to revile him. Oh, this fellow is bad news. So that they shun him. He's not liked by anybody. He's somewhat condemned by people. And then, worse yet, he begins to lose his health. And now he doesn't have friends. He doesn't have his health. He doesn't have any property. He doesn't have any money. And his wife is quite angry with him. And finally, he's still going along. And Satan then says, now he covers his whole body in boils and pain and oozing sores. And he's in agony all day long. And then he does have 3 friends still. They're not local, they're far away, and they hear about him. And they said, let's go and talk to Job and see what has become of him. So the 3 friends come and they visit Job. And instead of consoling him, they begin to interrogate him. They say, Job, what did you do? God is righteous. God is fair. God is all justice. Certainly, if you were living a just and righteous life, he would not treat you like this. So what is it that you did? And they began to interrogate him one after the other. And Job says, I don't know. I can't remember anything. I've done the best I can, and I just do not understand. So he's not happy about his situation at all. But he doesn't understand, but he loves God. Now, pretty soon, day after day, they're interrogating him, and he's getting exasperated with his friends to the point where he's in mental pain, physical pain, psychic pain, spiritual pain, and he's suffering. Well, finally, enough time goes by that God appears to Job. And he comes to him, it said, in a whirlwind, and talks. The voice comes out of the whirlwind and says, Job, you have pleased me greatly. You have remained faithful in your love to me. And gives him that encouragement. And all Job can say is, yes, Lord, but why? He wants to know why. And God sends to him, where were you, Job, when I created this world? Where were you when I made the seasons? Where were you when all that you see was nothing but, in the ether? In other words, he tells him, this is not your world. This is my world. And if you would know, and the lesson, of course, out of that is this, if you would know God's ways are not man's ways. And if you would know God's ways, which is what Master summed it up, if you want to know God's ways, you have to know God. But mankind has the intellect and wants to understand through the mind. And he tells him that. And then God turns his attention to the three friends and says, from you 3, your friend was in pain, your friend was suffering. And what did you do? Did you come to console him? No. You came to belabor him with your accusations, trying to find out the cause of a just man's fate. So he then is about to curse these 3. And Job intervenes. He says, no. Forgive them, Lord. They knew not what they were doing. And God repents and says, and you see, he's a righteous man. And he allows the 3 friends to go. And he frees Job from all his pains and sores and blesses him, and he's restored in his wealth. He's restored with a new family, and so on. He regains his friends again. Now, this has been a mysterious story throughout the ages that people have pondered the message here. But one of the essential points is to understand, yes, this point about why, God knows, but even in our misunderstanding or lack of understanding, to continue to love God. And you see, you have to remember at the very beginning of the story, God allowed Satan to test Job, you see. And he was tested, because, you know, you would think, why would he be tested if he's a virtuous man? The point is, he was tested because he was a virtuous man, you see. This is something we sometimes don't understand, that because he was strong, God knew he could bear it. He could bear the test that was coming to him as a proof of what a truly loving, righteous man, how that person behaves. And so Job, you could say, was an instrument in this case. And if you could take that forward many centuries, Christ came. He had no bad karma, but he was chosen to suffer. God allowed suffering to the righteous. And this is a message that's hard to understand on the mental plane, but what it's saying is that our love for God must be unconditional. Do we love God simply because we live a nice life? This is what Satan was saying, you see. And to condition our love for God to the fact that we don't have tests, that things work out well for life, this is the devotion, you might say, of a merchant. Somebody who, I give you my love, God, and then you will give me blessings back. And unfortunately, this is the run-of-the-mill way that people's devotion often is. They see the proof of their love by outward circumstances. And it's something that we can't really do. We have to go beyond that and love God unconditionally. And this is a message of faith, a message of having faith in God.